This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 43 of Retired Racehorse Radio on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, Cashel Products, and Bates Saddles. Retired Racehorse Radio is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse, brought to you in cooperation with the Retired Racehorse Project and New Vocation's Racehorse Adoption Program.
On today's show, we are talking to RRP Program Manager Kristen Bentley about working ranch and how she has found it to be a great second career for her retired racers. We jump sides from Western to side saddle with guest Ashleigh Glorioso and why she prefers the off-the-track thoroughbred as her preferred mount. And Leandra is back with another hot training tip. And of course, brings you our New Vocation's Adoptable Horse of the Week. Stay tuned.
And they're off on Retired Racehorse Radio, the podcast that is your guide to the adoption, care, and training of the retired racehorse.
This is Jamie Jennings in Norman, Oklahoma.
And this is Joy Hills from Kalamazoo, Michigan, and you're listening to Retired Racehorse Radio.
Girl, I'm not going to lie. I'm a little sore, and I cannot believe you have this guest booked today after what I did today.
I know. When I saw it, I was like, it's so perfect. It's amazing. She doesn't even know.
We're so connected. So truth behind the scenes, Joy books most of the guests. And so I really don't know who's coming on until I sit down. I'm like, oh, but I posted some videos of my first ever side saddle riding lesson. I had a side saddle riding lesson. Abby, who is staying with us, and myself, she was on Drax, our off-the-track thoroughbred, and I was on my Mustang Zeus, and we had a side saddle riding lesson, and you booked a side saddle rider for today. It's like we're totally connected.
Oh, it's too perfect. I was so happy about it. So, of course, it's going to be really fun to hear your experience as a first-time side saddle rider, plus hearing how Ashleigh's been doing it for years. It's going to be really cool to hear how you guys are pulling it together.
I might be a little sore, not going to lie. There's some different muscles that you use for that.
I have to admit, you're braver than me because I look at that and like, no, and I need an emergency dismount and I'm scared. But
okay.
Good for you, girl.
Just between you and me. So I was like, so how do I get on? She's like, get on. Yeah, but like, where do things between you and me? I was terrified, terrified. Like it's like this. I'm standing on the mounting block and there's only one stirrup. And I was like, well, what do I do? Like, do I like throw my leg over and like swing it all the way around and hook it around? And where does my feet go? And you have to point your toes down on your right foot, which is super weird because my whole life it's been like heels down. And it's like toe down, point your toes. I'm like, no, that's backwards. It's not okay. And it was terrifying. I tried driving one time and I thought driving was really scary too. Yet I'll go and I'm a 3-day eventer. So what, you just got to find your comfort zone. So
I think I'll stick with riding green horses the normal way. But I still love hearing how people are doing really adventurous things, which is always cool.
Oh gosh, it's so fun to connect with people. And I can't wait to hear somebody who has a lot of success in the world of thoroughbreds, because to be honest, I did not know how Drax, whose jockey club name is Nuisance, which we couldn't call him, I was not super convinced that he was going to be okay with it. Like, I mean, he's never had anything like that before. And they actually said, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. It takes the horses 10 minutes. And I was like, yeah, but what happens in 0 to 10? Like, how do they?
These are thoroughbreds after all.
I know. I was like, and he's like he's sensitive. And I'm not kidding you. He cantered around like an old show pony with Abby sitting on him side saddle. And I was like, but both legs are on the same side. I was sitting on Zeus and I was like, well, how do I get him to go? And she's like, how do you normally get him to go? And I was like, I squeeze with my legs. And she's like, I don't know, squeeze. And I squeeze because you only have like your left leg on the side of the horse. And he totally side passed. I was like, he knows how to like leg yield and things like that. And he just moved over like, well, that's it. And she was like, typically you'd have like a whip or a cane on the other side. And I was like, I don't have those things. So I just clucked and like shook the reins at him, like, giddy up, move forward, giddy up. So that is my side saddle experience. We'll see if I do it again, but I'm excited to learn a little bit about Ashleigh and how she uses, because she actually looks legit going over these pictures I've watched from her. So we'll get to that in a little bit more. We're going to talk to Kristen about her thoroughbred, and then we're going to talk to Leandra with something that all of us deal with, and that is ulcers in the off-the-track thoroughbred. So that'll be coming up. But first, let's hear a word from our title sponsor, Kentucky Performance Products.
She swallowed hard as they walked into the start box. She could feel his muscles tense under her leg. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a great ride. She didn't have to ask. He galloped out of the box and across the field toward their first training level course. His ears pricked. Her heart pounded. He attacked each obstacle with confidence, clearing them with room to spare. A huge smile broke out on her face as she crossed through the finish flags. She leaned forward and buried her face in his neck. Their bond of love and trust blocked out all else. This love story is brought to you by Elevate. Research proven to have superior bioavailability. Elevate supplies the essential vitamin E often missing from the equine diet. Its all-natural formula supports healthy muscle and nerve functions. The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Call 859-873-2974 or visit kppusa.com to order today.
Well, we've had her on before, but we love her so much we had to have her back again. We have Kristen Kovatch Bentley, who's from the Retired Racehorse Project. She's their program manager there, and she's also competed in the Retired Racehorse Makeover before. And so we wanted to bring her on to kind of talk about the Western Thoroughbred with us today. Welcome to the show, Kristen.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
Of course, we're so excited to have you. I feel like we have kind of missed out on our Western Thoroughbred tribe, and I had to call you. You're the girl for it. You're such a leader in it. And you do something pretty cool with your thoroughbred jobber. You compete in working ranch. Tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so in the show pen, we compete. The sport is called reined cow horse. There's a ton of different like ranch type, cow horse type activities. So you might also find similar classes called versatility ranch, or various aspects of this will show up in the ranch horse as well. So the Western world gets a little confusing that way. But we are in strictly a reined cow horse state association. And to the best of my knowledge, I think I'm probably the only thoroughbred like nationally competing in this sport, or I ride the only thoroughbred. So I guess we're doing the best out of all of them. So well done us.
So now before we go into it further, like this is not just like I show on the weekends. Like this is kind of a lifestyle for you. And now you have 2 thoroughbreds. Tell everybody about where you live and what you do.
Yeah, so we are in New York State, about as far west in New York State as you can get before you run into Erie, Pennsylvania. So we're usually cut off the map of New York, actually, because we're so far west. It's a very rural county, and I was lucky enough to marry a lovely man whose family runs a small beef operation. It's just a diversified family farm, but most of the acreage is tied up with beef grazing. So yeah, I get to go play cowgirl a little bit every day. It's not my day job, but it's a nice way for me to work off my board by keeping an eye on the cattle for my sister-in-law and grandfather. So yeah, so every day I either ride Jobber Bill, who's the horse that I took to the 2018 makeover, and I've had him the longest. And just about a year ago, actually we're coming up on the 1-year mark, I purchased Regal Justice, who we call Shorty Harmon. And he was actually the winner of the ranch horse in 2018 at the makeover. So my friend Tony Harmon, I had lost a really nice old horse last fall. And she kept telling me, you need to come by Shorty Harmon. You need to come by Shorty Harmon. And finally one day I said, okay, I'm coming. So so I brought him home and adjusted him a little bit for the working ranch life. But he already had a lot of criteria that I like to look for in a horse. So it was a fairly smooth transition. We discovered the hard way that unfortunately he has recurrent uveitis. So the stress of the move gave him an eye flare-up, but he's doing really, really well with that. So we just make some adjustments to his lifestyle. And yeah, he's really adjusted great to the working ranch life. And we went to an open show this year. Maybe we'll get to more shows next year. We'll see how it goes.
Gotcha. So you're saying you're really competing the only thoroughbred in it. Why do you think that is? Is it just lack of exposure, or is there something conformationally people need to look for to pick a thoroughbred for this? What do you think's holding them back?
Well, I think in the range cow horse, it's become so specialized in the breeding. I mean, you can get a purpose-bred horse that pretty much seems to come out of the womb knowing how to work a cow. So, it's a similar thing that you run into in any discipline that, the thoroughbred has so much athletic ability. And there's no reason that a thoroughbred can't work a cow, because Jobber truly, if I turn Jobber out with the cattle, he will go and work cows by himself.
Wow.
He definitely has an aptitude for it. He really, really enjoys it. Unfortunately, Jobber is not built for the job that he loves. So when people ask me like, oh, well, how do I find a Jobber? I'm like, well, maybe don't look for one.
Find something else.
So, yeah. So, I can talk about what people should look for, and then how I ended up with two horses who are physically completely unsuited to do range cow horse. But I think what's important with that, if you're riding a thoroughbred, is just to manage your expectations. So I don't expect to go down there and, go right down the fence and win the classes, but I don't show to win. I just show as a marker of my training and to help me sort of build goals for the next season. So that's a little unusual, I think, because I think a lot of people who go out to compete are competitive, and that's why they're there. So, but you can buy, a purpose-bred quarter horse for reined cow horse, fairly cheap. I don't want to say cheap, but, you can invest your money and get one of these horses that's designed for this very specialized sport and well-trained and well-started. So just like in any other discipline with the thoroughbreds, you do have to invest a lot more time to retrain and recondition the horse for that kind of physical job. So especially for Jobber, the conditioning is very important because he's really not built to be a cow horse. He's not designed to get down low and to make those rollback turns. He thinks he's a lot quicker on his feet than he is, but he tends to drop a shoulder and kind of lug in on the cow, which is the problem. You really want a horse to be elevated off his shoulder and not lean on your cow, because that's how you lose cattle pretty quickly. So we do a lot of different conditioning exercises at home, especially to strengthen his back end. His hind end was, I don't know what it was designed for. It was definitely not designed for cow horse. I don't really think it was designed for anything, but he has a very high set tail. He sort of has a weak hip, and he's got very long cannon bones. So those are the opposite of what you'd really like to look for in a cow horse. You want, a horse that's really designed to tuck his little booty under him and spin over those hocks and take right off. And Jobber's body is working against him.
So sometimes
with realistic expectations and careful conditioning, we can still go and have a safe day and a fun day. So.
Oh, absolutely. And so maybe some of the, the shorter thoroughbreds who seem to get overlooked at those adoption agencies potentially are a great option for this career in that case.
For sure. Yeah. And especially as a working horse, the thoroughbreds have the stamina to go all day long. So where, I used to bottom out a quarter horse if we were trying to bring our cows down and we had some sticky ones and we had to go back and, round some up and do a little tough work. The quarter horse would be bottomed out by lunchtime. And with Jobber, I can put a cooler on him and put him in the barn, grab a sandwich, and he's ready to go again in the afternoon, and he goes all day. So I enjoy that part of him for sure.
Love it. I'm going to ask you the tough question. So you'd say, I want to get my thoroughbred. I found the one that's the opposite of Jobber, but has the same heart and mindset. My first year with him, because you trained him as well to go to the makeover, what are your top 5 tips for someone who wants to get their horse kind of in that mental mindset to go into the Western discipline?
Oh, 5 tips are, you're going to have to count for me. So one thing I made sure I did in 2018, and it was tough for me because, of course, when you're preparing for the makeover, you start to put that timeline in your head. You start thinking, I've got 10 months, now I've got 9 months, now I've got 8 months.
It's terrifying the way it ticks down, doesn't it? It goes so fast.
Yeah, and it's amazing because truly it's not different from any other show that you put on your calendar in terms of, let's say I want to qualify for AECs next year. You don't put a timeline to AECs on your training, but for some reason with the makeover, it works a little differently.
Yeah.
So I made sure that if I rode him, and this is a little excessive, I rode him probably 6 days a week preparing for the makeover, but at the same time, I need to make sure that I get eyes on my cows every single day. So that gave me 1 day to go out there on foot or take another horse. So I rode Jobber 6 days a week. 2 of those days were dedicated to dry work or flat work. 2 of those were dedicated to actually working the cows, just sort of dorking around with the herd and trying to hold calves and cows away from the others. And then 2 of those days were strictly just trail riding. But that way he still got out every day. I could still look at the cows every day, make sure everybody was good. And then we could just go on a nice meander, maybe go for a long lope across the farm and just take all the pressure off. So that way we'd still get in lots of saddle time, but I didn't put the pressure on him too much. Really, I put the pressure on myself more than anything.
Right.
So make sure you make time for fun, especially if you're training with a big goal in mind. Make time for fun. These horses really don't need to get crammed on for months and months at a time. So that's one big tip. I guess my second tip, I don't have an arena at all.
Terrifying.
So
as a dressage rider, that's terrifying.
Yeah. This time of year gets really tricky because now that Jobber's like up to fighting weight with, good muscle and good fat, he gets a little sassy in the winter. So I have to pick my battles with him this time of year. But that's why I got the second horse. So Shorty can go out and check cows and Jobber can work on other things closer to the barn. But yeah, I don't have a ring. So that really forced me to be creative. And there were a lot of days, especially over the winter, where the most I could do was maybe walk or sometimes only ground walk out to the cattle. So don't be afraid to think outside your box. Sometimes the seasons really force you to slow down and reassess your training and work on some of those things that you probably should work on in the summer and sort of get pushed to the side. So like this winter, we're working on things like standing quietly in the barn while other horses leave. So all the stuff you should work on all year round, but really the winter forces you to slow down and take your time with that.
Especially where you are.
Then,
I mean, the winter is like kind of crippling for you guys.
Yeah, we got our first snow over the weekend, but then it was 64 today. So, it trades off. November can be really nice. We're very lucky. We're going to have a beautiful week, and then it'll, I'm sure, start to snow again in 2 weeks, and that'll be the end of it. But we make the most of it. So, it'll slow me down a little bit and make our rides a little shorter. We'll have more snuggle time in the barn and less loping across the pasture. So it all works out. And I think one of the most important things to remember if you're preparing for the makeover is have a plan for after the makeover. So I got Jobber as my forever horse. So he actually, I was in the in-game chat for a fantasy horse racing game that I played. And the game creator was like, I have this thoroughbred and I don't know what to do with him. I can't really afford to keep him. And I think he might really like cows, but I'm not sure because I'm a show jumper. And we sort of worked it out. And I just drove up across the border into Canada and picked him up. And turns out he really did like cows. Her assessment was correct. And I'd always really wanted to get a thoroughbred to get into ranch work. And he proved to be the perfect one. I know now what I wouldn't pick conformationally, but I didn't know that at the time. And in some ways, maybe it's sort of a blessing in disguise because now I have a great horse.
What are the conformational red flags?
I would really, like I mentioned before, I would pick a horse with a stronger back end. I don't think necessarily there's anything wrong with Jobber that he's going to, break down earlier or anything. Again, as long as I'm very mindful of his condition, and then plan my rides accordingly. Like in reined cow horse, you do want a horse to have a good square sliding stop, which I can't practice because I only ride on grass. So we just accept the fact that we're not going to have a great sliding stop. I'm not going to put sliding plates on them and try to ride them on grass. So, we pick our battles and work on different things. He's a little high-low in the front. I would probably not, if I had 2 horses that looked really good and I was leaning towards the one with high-low, I'd probably leave that one and get the other one because the high-low mismatched front feet is proving to have all sorts of effects elsewhere in his body. So he's got uneven shoulders. One thing we're going to be working on now is trying to find a better saddle that fits him because we determined the other day his saddle's not really fitting him very well. So that's a whole other ball of wax trying to fit Western saddles on thoroughbreds. So,
no kidding.
That's a really common question that we get in the Western thoroughbred group. And there is no, silver bullet answer to that. You just need to try a lot of saddles on and try to work with a fitter that really knows how to select a Western saddle. That's the best advice we can give people on that.
Lots of good information.
If I had to do it all over again too, I love Jobber's mindset and I love the way that he loves to work cows. So he doesn't know that he's not built for it. So I'm not going to tell him.
I had a trainer tell me one time, I was trying to event a Mustang who looked very drafty. And I remember her telling me as I'm coming around trying to get through this grid, she's like, you know what? He's not built for it. He's not bred for it. So you're just going to have to help him as much as you can. And that to me makes you think of jobber. You're not bred for it. You're not built for it. But you know what? By God, you're going to have to help him as much as you can to get the job done. And looks like you're doing what you're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. We have fun. And we've assembled a really nice community in our range cow horse organization where a lot of people have bought top dollar horses. There's some excellent horses in our state association, and people still come to the rail and cheer for Jobber just because they think he's cool. And they're like, you guys are having so much fun, and you guys are making a lot of progress. So it's, it's fun for people to cheer us on for that. And I think because I am really realistic, like, we're not going to go out and go win a bridal spectacular. It's just not in the cards for us. And that's okay, because that's not what I'm after right now. I just want to see how far I can take this great little horse and have some fun and learn a lot about Western traditions. So
there you go. There you have it.
I love it. Well, Kristen, if people want to follow you and Jobber and learn more about the Western Thoroughbred, where can they find that?
Oh, several places. So I'm still blogging a little bit for Horse Nation. Our column is called Racehorse to Ranch Horse. And actually, my most recent one is called Form Follows Function, except when it doesn't. And that's exactly about what we just talked about some of the ways that I keep Jobber conditioned, even though his body is not designed for range cow horse. Jobber also has a Facebook page. It's Jobber Bill Racehorse to Ranch Horse. And of course, I'm regularly making appearances at the Western Thoroughbred, which is a page as well as a group. So I'm an ambassador for that organization.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much again, Kristen, for coming on. And thanks for sharing, obviously, the lovely Jobber with us. And we'll be following your progress with him as you guys keep going up.
All right. Thanks so much for having me again.
Thanks, Guy.
Thanks, Kristen. Give Jobber a carrot from us.
Will do.
Casual Company helps you enjoy the ride with their full line of trail bags and tush cushions. From cannel bags to horn bags and everything in between, comfort and convenience on the trail is what Casual does best. To stay up to date with their latest products and news, follow Casual Company on Facebook and Instagram. And to find their products, visit an authorized dealer or visit casualcompany.com. That's casualcompany.com. Ashleigh, it's crazy that you are on, because I was just telling the tale of my first ever side saddle riding lesson today. And you are a side saddle, like, I don't even, what's the word? You're like an expert in side saddle, and you're a competitor, right?
I wouldn't say expert, but competitor for sure.
So tell us a little bit about you. Where are you? And tell us a little bit about your career with side saddle horses.
So I'm in Culpeper, Virginia, to be exact. I started doing side saddle with my old horse, who's now passed away, but he had done it a little bit before I got him. I did it in my junior years, like through 4-H. That's how I got started doing it. I've kept doing it through my adult years now. I've ridden countless horses aside now, which is a pretty crazy thing because not all of them are great or the most comfortable, but honestly, you give it a try and they all sort of take to it.
So Ashleigh, why side saddle and why thoroughbreds? How does that connection come together?
So thoroughbreds specifically, because I always grew up riding thoroughbreds. My mom rode thoroughbreds. It's something that we've always done. They're extremely versatile. So, they are going to give whatever you're doing with them 100%. All the ones that I've ridden, they've all actually come around and have done pretty successfully with it. I got into side saddle, like I said, with my old horse. He had done it a little bit, so I wanted to try it out with him. Took some lessons from someone, a couple people, and just kind of, it's something that's very unique, which I like about it. Very old fashioned, which I don't know why I like that, but I think it's part of the elegance, and it is something different. People are like, ooh, this is cool, which I like. Not always the most comfortable. But
okay, so let me stop you there, because I rode in my first lesson this morning, and I am glad you said that, because I don't think it was the most comfortable thing that I've ever done. Somebody asked me, was it more comfortable sitting side saddle than sitting, like mounted on a horse? And not to be whatever, but like, no. It was not.
No, and especially not like, when you're first starting, it's definitely very strange. You use a whole different set of muscles.
Yeah.
So that's something that you have to get used to. Now, to me, canering is much more comfortable. Trotting is not because it's so up and down, if you just look at the horse's gait in general, the canter is more forward and back, where trotting, they're, up and down. So that, to me, is what makes some of that uncomfortable. And then, two, some of it is the horse, their way of going and how they're built. Sometimes some of them are more comfortable than others. One of my thoroughbreds, he did okay with the side saddle, but he's not my favorite because he's a lot harder to ride because he's more uncomfortable than some of the others.
Right. Well, it's funny. Maggie, who gave me my lesson, she's, I guess, the president of the American Side Saddle Association. So she was coming through town and stopped and gave me a lesson. And she said that back in the day, when this, side saddle has been around since 1300s. And she said that women never trotted. It was either a walk or a canter. Women never trotted. It was improper. And I'm probably sure it was because you're bouncing around a little bit more than you should for, old timey purposes. But she said you never trotted, which I was like, that sounds amazing. Let's do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Trotting is not, I've been doing, some trot sets here lately to try to get back in shape, and it's not comfortable.
But it is very beautiful and very elegant. And it's just, it is really impressive to watch. And definitely, my arena is right by the road, and somebody actually stopped their truck on the side of the road to watch us ride around side saddles. So it definitely gets people's attention for sure. I'm sure they were like, I'm in Oklahoma. They're like, what the hell is she doing on that horse? Crazy. I mean, I'm already in an English saddle in Oklahoma. It's crazy. So,
so they're probably already looking.
Yeah, right. What's she doing with them fences, those jump poles and things like that? Anyway, point is, it is definitely a unique thing. It is a cool thing. If people want to learn, Ashleigh, because I know you have a business and you have PEMF that you do, which is just awesome. Where can people go to find out some information about you and what you do?
I have my Facebook page. I do have the business page, which has mostly my PEMF things on there. That also has, some of my grooming, and I've tried to integrate some of my training with that, but more of my training and stuff is through my personal page, Ashleigh Glorioso. But in general, I don't do a lot of the side saddle lessons, but if they want to find out about it, there's a lot in the Northern Virginia area. Numerous people, not just myself, that are very knowledgeable in side saddle and do lessons and things like that, because we're in the middle of hunt country.
Well, I mean, not to brag or anything, but I know you wouldn't say this, but I would like to tell y'all that Ashleigh is defecting business, but you are a 3-time consecutive Ladies Hunter Side Saddle Championships at the Pennsylvania National, and all of those on and off the track thoroughbred. So you're doing amazing at it. I think it's funny how you think it's not very comfortable, yet you're out there crushing, show jumps and 100 fences and all those things. But yeah. So if people can find out from you where they should go learn from the people that taught you.
Honestly, just through Google and doing networking through Facebook, because most of the people that I know and even that I have taken lessons with, they are all on Facebook, and they're just Googling in that area. A lot of the, like I said, the networking is all online, all social media. So honestly, that's where I would go. There's other websites. I mean, Virginia Equestrian, some people advertise on there.
Well, you can find anything in Google. So if you want to Google somebody who's going to teach you side saddle right around you, just Google side saddle riding instructor and put in your state, and we'll see what comes up. Ashleigh, as always, thank you so much for coming on and telling us. And say hello to Epilogue, who was your champion horse. Give him a carrot from us.
Oh, well. Funny story about him. He's actually my sister's horse. I don't actually own him. I was riding him for her.
Do you rub it in her face that you've won the championship every year?
No, we're pretty close. So the other 2 horses, they're mine, but he was her horse, and it was kind of let's go try it, because he's not as easy. He's much harder to prep for it. So he's not as easy for him. Actually, this was pretty special. And she was super excited, obviously.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, then sisterly love. I love it. Well, thank you for coming on, and we will look forward to talking to you after your next championship.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Bye. Bates saddles are the saddle brand that truly put your horse first. Enjoy comfort, optimal balance, and seamless contact with your horse, leaving you free to concentrate on your aids. Bates Saddles offers you many features you won't find on other saddle brands, including the external Flexi Contour block system, which is anatomically contoured to your leg, allowing it to ride in and behind the block to support your individual position for maximized comfort and security. Also, an adjustable ergonomic stirrup bar, which allows effortless rider alignment to be achieved by altering the position of the stirrup bar, enabling you to have complete control over your preferred riding position. Many styles are available, including the new Bates dressage saddles, the Bates Victrix jumping saddles, and the Bates Advanta eventing saddle. Oh my God, you do die looking at that thing. It's awesome. You can even customize colors. It's so cool. Anyway, it's the official saddle of the United States Eventing Association. To learn more about the Bates saddles, go to batesaddles.com. That's batesaddles.com. Joy, let's head to Kentucky to New Vocations, where we talk to our friend every episode, Leandra Cooper. Hello, Leandra.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us again. You keep coming back, so you must like us a little bit. You answer the phone.
A little bit.
Well, we are going to talk about, oh my gosh, an honor code baby. I adored honor code, so I'm super excited to talk to you about honor code. But first, we've got to ask you a tip, a training tip, something to do with horses. I think last episode we figured out you deal with. How many horses are in your Kentucky division right now? Ballpark?
We have around 75 horses.
Okay. And that's a revolving door, people. So she's the one, Leandra is kind of the go-to expert on retired racehorses coming right off the track. So one of the questions that I have is, I was doing a little research, and they say that 50 to 90% of thoroughbreds that come off the track have stomach ulcers. Now, as far as your experience, when you get the horses off the track, what is your kind of take on that?
Well, I definitely agree with the numbers. I think that what we've seen, and we've actually been lucky enough to work with some groups that have actually undergone some of the studies that attribute to that knowledge base that we have about stomach ulcers and looking specifically at horses coming right off the track. And what we saw was that even of a select group that we picked out for different studies, but thinking in each particular group and time, when we've picked out horses who we thought, okay, this horse seems like they have textbook symptoms, that we found that those horses were not always the ones who had, that you can't always identify the ones who have the most traumatic cases. And I think that's really, really important, because there are some horses that you can say, oh, well, that horse seems like maybe it's ulcery. And you could say, okay, this is really seeming like a textbook case. And a lot of times, especially given those numbers, you'll be accurate on that. But what I took from that the most was that there are a lot of horses who might have other things going on, but just maybe seem like you can sort of blame ulcers and say, okay, you kind of seem like you have ulcers, or it's sort of likely that you would have ulcers. And we saw that maybe they just had grade 1 ulcers, and not the most traumatic cases. Still worth looking into, but sometimes just giving the horses downtime and making sure that they have sort of a vacation, because just like people, sometimes our issues, physical and mental, could be addressed by just having time to relax and alleviating some of the stressors. And for horses, especially on the track, that's a really intense job to have. So sometimes they just need the time off, and that can correct itself when you're dealing with a minor grade of ulcers, so that it's not to be ignored, obviously, but maybe not something that you need to jump into full-blown treatment scale.
Right.
But just the importance, what I really, really took from that when we've looked into the people who are scoping them routinely and horses who are being treated and rescoping them and all of that, was one, it's very treatable if you pick up on it, but two, that the symptoms are not really clear. So it's important to keep in mind for any horse that if you're noticing signs of pain or attitude changes, but just more so than anything, that we are always considering the horse and their comfort rather than blaming things on behavior. Because I think,
amen.
If you were to look at every horse in our barn, I'm sure you could find the horses who are coming off the track that they can have all these different levels and different grades of ulcers, or some have none and they just are sort of anomalies. But certainly a lot of them have stressors and it turns into ulcers. But, even a horse who doesn't show those stereotypical signs, they might be dealing with it. It's really hard for us to pinpoint based off of like these sort of textbook obvious signs that we sort of know and look out for. But so I would say from that, like just being mindful of the horses and thinking of things like stomach ulcers, because the numbers are certainly point to that. It's likely that they are dealing with that if they're coming right off the track and they haven't had downtime. So you can choose to treat. You can choose to just give them time. You can choose to scope them, but it's something to definitely just play on the safe side, because it is really treatable. Just always consider it as something that you'll have to deal with or go through or consider that treatment especially when you're adopting a horse coming right off the track, because I'll get questions saying, well, do you think this horse is ulcery? Well, that's a hard question, because like, as I said, you can't always pick that out. Even the ones who you say, oh, well, likely it is. Well, it's likely it is for any of them, but it's just something that we should consider as intrinsically involved in that. But sure. I will say the ones who we've noticed most consistently when we did have them scoped and when they were in those studies, the horses who were war horses and had just finished that career were oftentimes ones who experienced the higher grades
Sure.
of stomach ulcers. But they've had, again, it's a tough career. It's a lot of traveling. It's a lot of hard work, not as much turnout time often. Some of them get that time off and some don't. But again, like those are horses who have campaigned for a while. So it is, again, just really important for everybody to consider with every OTTB that is likely something that they are going through to one extent or another. So it's really important to be mindful of what they're going through, and then figuring out ways to approach that so that you can set them up for success in the future.
I was looking at a study, and it's KER, which is Kentucky Equine Research, and it says only 37% of untrained thoroughbreds may have ulcers, but that rate increases to 80 to 100% within 2 to 3 months of training. And then you add on war horses who have raced quite a bit. I mean, I think it's a really big problem with racehorses, and a lot of them come to me. The ones that have had a lot of downtime are super fine. Like they've healed, they've had no stress, they've had no reason to produce ulcers, they've had round bales, and they've had constant food. But the ones that come straight off the track, how many times, all of you people listening to this, have you heard that horse is crazy? That horse is crazy. It's dangerous. It's this, it's that. It's horses don't want to be bad. They inherently don't want to behave poorly and hurt people or be crazy, as you call it. There's usually an underlying medical condition. And I think that is our job as stewards of these horses once they come off the track, to figure out what their issues are and address those. So I do think you're right. So I know people always go, oh, it's ulcers, but it's true. Look at these numbers. It's insane. Standardbreds, endurance horses, show horses, because that is the way that we've created their lifestyle when they can't graze, and walk 100 miles a day. So at any rate,
I think that is a really important point, because a lot of it is just based off of our expectation of the horses. So if you were to take a horse who does have stomach ulcers, but allow them the time to have off, and to just give, maybe have them in a 24/7 field, giving them the option to just have that time off, just be grazing all the time, return to a very sort of historically natural basis for them. A lot of that can resolve on its own, but we put them on these time frames where we want to have them in training. We want to do that. But if we are going to do that, we also need to consider that will require many times to have a bigger investment in the treatment options to mitigate the effects of the training and the stress that we're putting them through. So, giving them extended time off and having that work-life balance for them, is important. And, or, bringing in a heavier treatment style, like doing ulcer guard, but you can't have neither in those mix. Right. You need to incorporate some balance for them, whether it's in a more medicated sort of way, but hopefully also bringing in that work-life balance for them and giving them time, because that itself can resolve quite a few issues.
And from the back of the pack on the outside, Commanding Curve is taken second, but California Chrome shines bright in the Kentucky Derby.
And now it's time for the new Vocation's Winner's Circle Adoptable Horse of the Week.
Now let's move on to Dark Code. His barn name is Donnie. He's an honor code baby, and oh my gosh, he looks just like his sire.
He does. He's a carbon copy.
Yeah.
And I have found, I didn't know honored code himself, but I have had the great fortune of having several of his progeny in the barns, and they are consistently some of my favorite horses to work with, and Dark Code is no exception to that. So at 3 years old, he's already a nice chunky built 16, maybe a touch higher than 16 already, because he's been growing.
He's only 3.
He's only 3 years old, so still time for that. And he is a horse who we've given extra time off because he had some irregular fibers in his suspensories, which is really common, but something that a lot of times that we're able to help them resolve by just working on creating a little more heel and working on their feet to give them the relief they need, as oftentimes that soft tissue damage happens as a result of hyperextension, which oftentimes happens because they don't have enough heel to work with, so they just can't get the relief they need. I digress. But he's just had extra time off. He's already jogging well. Our predicted timeline for him was to give him the rest of the year off, but he's already feeling really good. This is a horse who, even at 3 years old, is so calm and cool and collected, minds himself really well. He's in a 24/7 field. It's a 15-acre field. He's an easy leader who doesn't pick on anybody, but has that aura of cool guy that all the other horses want to follow. And he's just happy to eat all day, and a horse who can keep his condition, keep his feet in good condition. I mean, this is a horse who's already set up very well to be an easier keeper. And he has this really level mindset under saddle, because we had a couple rides where we were just sort of getting used to him before we decided to give him more time. And he could not have been easier to work with. He just had that easy disposition to him, and that feeling of being a sort of older soul where he just felt like this was so routine. This lifestyle has transitioned to being more sport horse lifestyle, swapping from being a racehorse and being at a slower pace. Like, this is all totally easy to him. So I'm super excited to see how he does when he starts being put back into work and when he's with an adopter in the future. I think that he's going to be an all-star. So I'm really excited about him.
Is he barefoot right now?
He is barefoot.
He is. Okay, so I'm watching him in the pasture, and oh my God, like he comes, your third video is him in the pasture, and he comes cantering down a hill on his left lead, does a perfect flying lead change directly in front of the camera, and like goes, like, what?
He's showing off.
Yeah, he's just got really good balance. I think you could see where he would almost reach out a little, because y'all have some jog videos of him on the concrete. And I really think like even with some shoes, he would like really step out a lot more. Like he is awesome.
Yeah,
he's just
not even trying right now.
No, he's just, and he looks just like his daddy, who I was like obsessed with. So if you could put him over to the side, I'll come and see him next week.
No problem.
This is awesome. Well, as always, thank you so much for coming on. It's horseadoption.com. The horse's name is Dark Code. And of course, Leandra, people can email you for questions. They can find you on Facebook, Leandra Cooper, New Vocations, Racehorse Adoption Program. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you can find our show notes and links to today's guest on the website at retiredracehorseradio.com. Find us on Facebook. Just search for Retired Racehorse Radio. We're on Twitter at Horse Radio. I have a Facebook page, Jamie Jennings, Certified Monty Roberts Instructor. You can email Joy at horseradionetwork.com, or find her on Insta, which the kids are saying these days. Find her on Insta, Joy H. Equestrian. Thanks so much to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without Kentucky Performance Products, and we're happy to have Bates products, Bates saddles, and Cashel products. Don't forget to check out all the other radio shows on horseradionetwork.com or at horseradionetwork.com. I never get to do this part, George. Usually it's Joy, but she had to go. She says her exit line is, remember to set your goals high and love to learn from every ride. Did I do it in her voice? Pretty good, my producer. And then for me, spay, neuter, and geld.